last number of days is Watch China. There's any number of ways to watch China, and this morning it's on price. William Lee joins us. He's chief economist at Milken Institute, tours of duty with the International Monetary Fund. We're thrilled he could give us perspective here on the Pacific Rim. Bill Lee, I want you to explain to begin the importance of pork in the CPI index and frankly the importance of pork, pig, to the Chinese culture and diet. What's the so what of pork deflation?
Well, actually, the Chinese are telling us that the reason why they have the deflationary pressure they have is because pork is so important in the Chinese CPI because it's such an important part of the diet and part of the consumption basket that it really isn't that big a deal that they aren't really in a state of deflation, that the economy really is chugging along as they had hoped. That's a lot of malarkey because, after all, yes, as important as pork is, there's a lot of deflationary forces in the Chinese economy, which means that there's not enough demand. And why is that? Because the Chinese economy just is not given the right kind of policies. The Chinese have been trying to revive the economy by supply side measures. And we all know the problem is with demand because people are afraid to spend because they don't have jobs and their wealth is going down the toilet because of the property market. It really shows you a way of putting lipstick on a pig.
Will they export disinflation? Will they export outright deflation?
If pork really is the main cause of their deflation, it's not that big a deal for most of our CPI baskets, so they will not be exporting that deflation. But what we see is that the factory prices are really low, and they're coming out at the price of the factory gates have been going down for the last 13 months. That is one source of deflation for the rest of the world because our imports are going to be cheaper and cheaper.
There's a question, though, of how many imports the U.S. is going to be doing and what the relationship really is going to be between the U.S. and China. How closely are you watching this dinner happening later this month with Xi Jinping and hundreds of business leaders in the United States?
This is really another attempt to try to attract foreign investors because foreign companies are so important to China. Do you realize that foreign companies are only about 3% of all Chinese companies, but that 3% accounts for 10% of urban employment, 40% of China's trade, 16% of China's tax revenues. So foreign companies are incredibly important for the Chinese economy. And right now, they're trying to reverse the cycle of exodus, that everyone essentially is blowing out of China because there's no confidence that that is a profit center for companies going forward. And China's trying to say, hey, we have a friendly environment for you guys. Come on back. And that's a real hard task for them to do right now.
So, Bill, who do you think is courting who at this dinner? Do you think that it's the business executives in the U.S. courting Xi Jinping or the other way around?
A little of both, because the executives that are there, the Jamie Dimons and the Jane Frasers, we're here in China and we're here to assure you that we're here to stay. But the new companies that are trying to get into China are not the major companies that we all think about as multinational corporations, but instead they're the small little businesses that are thinking maybe China is still a good place to have low-cost labor. And I think they're finding out very quickly that the costs of doing business in China are much higher than they thought because you can't get information. You can't get things done the way you do in the United States because of the security measures they put in place.
When we talk about the dampening effect of the Chinese economy on the global economy, there's a real question about what the tea leaves are, and people have pointed to the copper market, people have pointed to the oil market and prices there as a sign of just how much demand is falling off in China. Do you think that that's accurate? Do you disagree with the Saudi energy minister's proclamation in the past couple of hours that there is no demand problem and that, you know, it's really just simply speculation?
Well, I think the real issue is where's the source of the demand problems? China is saying, well, we have a lot of domestic demand. It's really quite strong, and we're trying to revive even more of it. But it's really the lack of foreign orders, that the foreign companies just aren't here to produce, and we just can't produce for the rest of the world the way we used to. And they blame it on the anti-inflationary policies that the U.S. and Europe has put in place for dampening the prices there.
Billy, is austerity still comfortable? Europe and the United Kingdom seem to have a heritage of austerity. Does the leadership of China share the same tone of austerity?
Actually, the austerity they try to put in place is for this state and local governments who are running huge deficits and piling up lots and lots of local debt. They want them to control themselves, but they want the private citizen to spend like crazy because that's where there's a lack of demand. And every policy they put in place, whether it's lowering interest rates or trying to put liquidity in the banking system, goes into the private sector and it gets all sopped up in savings. People just don't want to spend when they are afraid that they're going to be losing their jobs, when they're seeing salary cuts, and when their kids are unemployed. In a situation like that, you're not going to have the private sector helping you unless you restore some fundamental confidence that employment is here to stay and we're able to revive the economy. Right now, the Chinese have not done that.
Well, Bill, that's why we should finish with that elephant in the room, FDI. You saw the numbers in the last week. What can they do about that? Are we about to see a big charm offensive from Xi and others abroad?
You're going to see the charm offensive at the APEC meeting, but they're going to have to assure people that the fundamental changes are going to be put in place. The fundamental change is going to be that Xi no longer is going to mandate the centralization of everything. And right now, that's far from being on the horizon. Xi is doing even more to centralize control.
That data turning negative recently. Bill, thank you, sir. Bill Lee of the Milken Institute. I think a lot of people just want a more predictable policy regime, Bramo, coming out of China, and they're trying to get their hands around where some of these things are going.
So at what point is Xi Jinping willing to compromise some of his ideological standpoints that have driven a lot of his policy stances and try to create some certainty to lure businesses back? I mean, you pointed to foreign direct investment. It went negative for the first time on record. This is a serious problem for them.
It's a big issue, Tom, which is why I think a lot of people are looking for that charm offensive in the coming weeks.
The charm offensive is there, but he's got some cushion because I see a lot of people still modeling out 5% real GDP, which is not 7%, but it gives him time to try his unique experiment here that Dr. Lee was talking about. I mean, the 5%, he can get by.
Sure.
You know, that's the basic idea.